On June 22, 1904, around 3 p.m., Baron Pierre de Coubertin and Count Brunetta de Seo rushed from the mansion house to the Italian embassy at 20 Grosvenor Square to implore the Italian ambassador to the UK, Alberto Panza, to send a telegram to the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III, and the Mayor of Rome, Prince Colonna. Shortly after, they received this response from the King's Minister of the Royal Household. "The King, my illustrious sovereign, greatly appreciates the tribute of which you and your colleagues have been kind enough to be the interpreters. Warmly thanks to the committee which, by proclaiming Rome the seat of the 4th Olympiad 1908, has given Italy such an effective token of cordial sympathy. Minister of the Royal Household, Panzo Vaglia." Prince Colonna replied in a similar manner, showing appreciation and thanks, and later accepted the presidency of the organizing committee for the 1908 Olympic Games. And with that, Rome was officially set to host the 1908 Olympics. Truly, though, the matter was already settled earlier the same day at the 6th International Olympic Committee, presided over by Baron de Coubertin, chairman and founder of the IOC. 3 cities were vying to host the 1908 Summer Olympics, and it was a tight race between Berlin and Rome, with many voters favoring holding it in Berlin. But in the end, the representative for the Berlin proposal, Dr. Gebhardt, and the rest of the committee were convinced that Rome was the best choice. Despite the disadvantage of a less central geographical location, it had a greater chance of success. In exchange, Berlin was chosen for the next meeting of the International Committee in 1906. The next day, newspapers across the world announced that the venue for the next Olympics had been selected. By 1906, preparations in Rome for the 1908 Summer Olympics were starting to get underway. Though falling behind schedule somewhat, there was still belief that Rome's fame and prestige as a destination would boost the subpar attendance numbers from the previous Olympics, with even the Pope buying in on the importance of the Olympic Games. Then, in early April 1906, with the Olympics set to begin in Rome 2 years later, their Olympic aspirations and the entire country was suddenly thrown into disarray as Mt Vesuvius erupted. Volcanic activity on Mt Vesuvius didn't come to a surprise to anyone. Throughout the years, it had erupted numerous times, with of course the most well-known being its eruption in 79 AD, which buried the city of Pompeii in volcanic ash. In fact, in the past 50 years prior to this eruption, there had been 5 other volcanic eruptions, with the most recent being in 1872. But despite the frequency of eruptions, it had been a long time since Mt. Vesuvius had caused a significant amount of destruction to the cities and towns in the surrounding areas. Just prior to the massive eruption, Raphael Matucci, the director of the Royal Observatory on Mt. Vesuvius, first noticed unusual signs. He says, "Lava began to overflow. This gradually increased as several small lava streams formed into one great current." He goes on to say, in the days before the worst of the eruption, an enormous stream of lava came from the summit, meeting the other stream. While historian Herbert Vaughan reported that a few days previous to the eruption, the island of Ustica, which lies some 40 miles north of Palermo, had been visited by earthquake shocks of such violence that the Italian government at last decided to remove the greater part of its population to the mainland, as well as stating that the supplies in the wells on the mountainsides began to fail and there was observed a strong taste of sulfur in the drinking water. Despite this, not everyone heeded the ominous warnings. Small volcanic activity was relatively common and often resulted in very little. This led some locals to joke that the activity was just the mountain preparing a royal welcome for King Edward of Britain, who was meant to visit Naples that month. Shortly afterward, anyone who thought this was just another typical volcanic event was quickly proven wrong. On Sunday morning at 8 a.m., Raphael Matucci witnessed the mountain give out a deafening roar and huge rocks hurled skyward. In the days following, the scale of destruction was massive and widespread. Vaughan stated that all vegetation for miles around the volcano has been injured or destroyed, and that the streets and gardens of Naples were shrouded in a funeral mantle of grayish-yellow dust, estimating that 315,000 tons of ash and debris fell in Naples alone. This massive amount of lava was the most ever recorded from a Mt. Vesuvius eruption, and, along with the ash, destroyed numerous towns and villages and killed an estimated 200 people. With destruction at this scale, and Naples covered in ash, Italy was reeling. Focus, and with their resources, shifted quickly from preparing for the Olympics to recovery. Already there were persistent rumblings that Italy was in fact already behind in both preparations and funding, and with all the funding earmarked for the Olympics now going towards the relief effort, the Olympic Committee was left scrambling to try and find a replacement. It's certainly not unheard of for a global event to disrupt the Olympics. In 1916, World War I led to the cancellation of the 6th Olympics scheduled to be held in Berlin, and World War II canceled 2 Olympics, 1940 and 1944 games in Helsinki and London respectively. And even as recently as 2020, we saw the Tokyo Olympics delayed by a year due to COVID. But back in 1906, the Olympics were not the inevitable phenomenon they are now. This was to be only the fourth Olympics in the modern era, and after the disaster in Italy, there's no guarantee that it would take place. Amidst this crisis, Count Brunetta de Useo, the IOC member behind Rome's initial proposal, reluctantly informed his colleagues of Italy's withdrawal. The IOC swiftly convened at the Zappeion to find a new host city, and after some deliberation, London was chosen to take over the mantle. But this wasn't an easy task. The British Olympic Association was in its infancy, only founded the year prior, and this late switch gave them limited time to build the infrastructure necessary to host the Games. The president of this newly created British Olympic Association, Lord Desborough, wrote in the National Review that less than 2 years is a brief space in which to organize an international meeting for which the ordinary period of 4 years has been found none too long. The work has been enormous. But Lord Desborough and the Brits rose to the occasion, and in 10 months throughout 1907 and early 1908, they worked relentlessly on building the 93,000 capacity White City Stadium, with up to 12,000 laborers working throughout the night under the floodlights. In the end, they were successful and went on to host the 1908 Games, which were held over a 6-month period from the end of April until the end of October. Despite the short preparation time and various challenges, the Games were a resounding success. London set new standards in Olympic history with innovations such as the first parade of athletes behind national flags, the introduction of winter sports, and the establishment of standardized rules and international judging. The event was marked by memorable moments, like the marathon event, where Canadian favorite Tom Longboat collapsed after 19 miles, possibly due to the champagne his assistants gave him. This led to suspicions of drugging. If that wasn't enough, Italian runner Durando Pietri then took the lead, aided occasionally by brandy. However, the heat and exertion caused Pietri to collapse 5 times and lose his way in the final stages. Officials, reportedly including Sherlock Holmes author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, helped the exhausted Pietri cross the finish line, prompting a U.S. protest. As a result, the gold medal was awarded to American Johnny Hayes, the second finisher. Despite this disqualification, Pietri gained significant fame and financial support, turning professional and even defeating Hayes twice in future races. At the end of the day, I think the story of the 1908 Olympics, from Mt Vesuvius to the marathon highlights, reminds us that the Olympics are not just about winning medals, but about stories of determination, overcoming the odds, and feats of sport that captivate the world. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this piece of Olympic history, and if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.